Hello there, this is Cassia.
This is Coden.
Welcome to the Ebon Hawk, a podcast where we discuss Star Wars, the Knights of the Old Republic games, and proposed movie adaptation, as well as Star Wars news. This is episode 1.5. This is where the Jedi quest begins. So, in case you're living under a rock, there was a little big trailer for Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. We thought it would be fun, maybe not to do a breakdown, maybe it'll end up being a breakdown, but we kind of just wanted to kind of go through it and kind of note some of the good shots, give our thoughts, impressions, and feelings on the trailer, and kind of go from there. One thing I noticed when the trailer started is Lucasfilm, there was no glitter anymore. I kind of missed that.
Honestly, no. I don't know if they're going for a new look or if they just...
Maybe it's been gone for a while and I didn't notice, but at least Lucas's name is still there.
Yeah.
So we start out with Finn talking about the Force and how it brought them together, which is interesting, coming from someone I assume is a non-Jedi. Throughout the trailer, I couldn't find the names of the worlds, but there's like a jungle world, a rain world, a desert world, and an ice world. It would be interesting if the ice world and the rain world end up being the same planet, but maybe they're different, so... We kind of have a jungle world, kind of like a forest, Moon of Endor, stand-in. Desert, basically Tatooine, Geonosis, or Jakku. Then ice, we have something standing in for Hoth. And then kind of finally a prequel kind of era world, kind of like Kamino. Do you know what those worlds are?
I was doing a little bit of my own research, and I stumbled across a couple really interesting things. One, I mean, we're most likely returning to Endor for the wrecked Death Star 2. Also, with the forest moon, now there's talk about the state of Endor, so that could be Endor, but at the same time, we could be going back to Yavin or to that planet that Maz is from. I can't remember that planet. But it's possible to
Takonda, I believe.
Yeah,
I'd
have to look it up, but we could be going back there since that's kind of a new Star Wars established planet. Or it could be something totally new. I mean, for the most part, we haven't seen them return to a pre-established planet in any of these new movies.
No. I wonder if that's a copyright issue. It'd be interesting to know. But one world I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw Batu. Just kind of get that connection there. And you can be like, go to Batu, where they go in Rise of Skywalkers and fly the Millennium Falcon. Just like Rey, Chewie, Poe, and Finn do, you know?
Uh-huh.
I could see that happening. Then as the trailer goes on, I noticed there is a Mon Calamari there. I had to look up his name. It looks like he is Admiral Akbar's son, named Aftab. I presume he's there because Disney realized a lot of fans got mad that a beloved character was kind of unceremoniously killed off. I mean, he's famous. Like, It's a Trap is like a meme. It was kind of sad just to have Admiral Akbar die in, like, the first 5 minutes of The Last Jedi, so hopefully Aftab is here to stay, and perhaps he'll be promoted to Admiral Aftab. And he can say, it's a frap, or it's a crap, or it's a crapshoot. I don't know, something that rhymes with trap, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I know from Return of the Jedi, Admiral Akbar didn't really have much of any good lines, and then when they brought him back for The Force Awakens, he had basically all of his lines were just running meme lines trying to be funny. Like, I think one of his lines from The Force Awakens was they had to find some way for him to be like, there's no way to penetrate the shield, which is basically one of the things that he says in Return of the Jedi. And I hope that they don't just bring him back almost like a Jar Jar Binks move.
I don't think so, but rest in peace, Admiral Akbar. We miss you. Rose appears in the trailer. We'll see what happens with the character, how much of a screen presence she has. I love the actress, and I don't like the hate she's received. We'll just see how that unfolds in Rise of Skywalker.
I'm curious to see if they're still gonna like try and develop a relationship between her and Finn, because of how they ended the last movie, where they just saw things very different. And
yeah,
I mean, like, Finn was ready to go. He was ready to, basically commit this ultimate sacrifice that probably would have won them that battle. And then, she interrupts him and nearly gets them both killed, stopping him. So it was a totally like dumb move.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if like they're gonna make up for that, somehow, or if they're gonna just completely split arcs.
She definitely thinks she's in a relationship. Who knows if Finn thinks they are, but yeah. But one thing I noticed is Poe, he hasn't really gotten much screen time. I think like in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, he only has something like 20 minutes of screen time. So he doesn't get to do much, but at least he looks good doing it. I kind of noticed when he's on the desert planet, he kind of looks a little bit like Nathan Drake from the Uncharted series with the scarf and the regalia. But one thing I kind of was thinking about during this trailer is with the original trilogy, you had a distinct main three. You had Luke, you had Leia, and you had Han. And within the first movie, the pieces came together, they met, and they spent time on the Death Star developing a relationship and getting to know each other. And then they break apart, go their different ways in Empire Strikes Back, and then they come back together in Return of the Jedi, and you're invested in them as a trio in movie one. And with the prequels, it's a little bit different because you have Qui-Gon Jinn in episode 1, but you kind of have Qui-Gon / Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme as kind of the main three there. And then you see Obi-Wan and Anakin as Master and Padawan at the beginning. It establishes it, and then they meet up with Padme, and then you kind of see them all interact kind of awkwardly, not gonna lie. And then Obi-Wan goes his own way, and Anakin and Padme kind of go their own way together. And then they kind of come back together in 3, but in episode 1, you're invested in them all together. But in The Force Awakens, the only 2 characters that really spend a whole lot of time together are Rey and Finn. And Finn spends a little bit of time with Poe. You think he's dead, and then he's not. And then they all kind of go their own separate ways again, like a day later. And then Finn leaves, and Poe's kind of just doing his own thing, and Rey's just on an island with Luke Skywalker. Poe and Rey don't even meet until the end of episode 8. And now we're approaching the last movie of this trilogy, and the trio of, I suppose, Rey, Finn, and Poe haven't even spent like 5 minutes together, and I'm supposed to be invested in this trio. And I just think that's not the best way to write a trilogy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is just kind of an identity crisis with these three movies. I mean, I think the character that probably spends the most time with Rey is actually Chewbacca.
Disney kind of treats him like a dog.
Right.
Just like a dog with no feelings. He doesn't get the Falcon. He's kind of just there for comic relief.
Well, and the droids were the same way too. The droids tagged along with Luke. Chewbacca tagged along with Han. Now is tagging along with Rey. I'm curious. From the trailer we're looking at Rey and Kylo Ren, what looks like them working together. I'm curious to know how long that's going to span the movie. If it's going to be at the beginning, if it's going to be like this awakening for Kylo Ren to be like, you know what, I'm doing the wrong thing, I'll join Rey, or is it the other way around? Rey's thinking, you know what, I don't have any ties with the Resistance, I'm going to join Kylo Ren. What?
It would be interesting to see Rey go evil and Kylo go good, I guess.
It's. I mean, I could see it going a couple different ways. I think Rey can potentially be a more evil character than Kylo Ren.
It would be interesting.
This trailer makes it seem like maybe like she's not all that bad, but she does go off on and do her own thing.
Yeah.
And it's possible that maybe Kylo is more just against the Resistance because Han and Luke were part of the Resistance. So maybe he joins up with Rey because it's a cause that they both agree with, and they're no longer part of the Resistance.
Yeah.
And and at that point, like where do Rey's ties really tie down to? I mean, gray style Jedi that Disney kind of wants to advertise, and maybe they just meet in the middle and they split off on their own story arc, like
Yeah.
kind of how the rest of the franchise has been doing since The Force Awakens.
It'd be interesting. Speaking of Rey and Kylo, the next part of the trailer is Rey saying, like, everyone thinks they know me, but they don't. Like, yeah. And I'm kind of like, well, that's kind of the same for the audience. We don't really know much about her. She's still a mystery. All these movies in. Kylo says, but I do. Now, whatever ends up happening, I don't know if, like, Rey and Kylo are meant to be enemies, allies, love interests, all of the above, something else entirely, but whatever ends up happening, like, I just think it is an interesting dynamic. It's probably, from 7 and 8, the most interesting thing to watch, the most interesting aspect, and it looks like they'll be fighting again, and it sounds like from the promotion that they've really been working harder than they did ever before, like in episodes 7 and 8. So I'm just hoping for, it's probably an unrealistic hope, but I'd really just love a lightsaber battle on par with Anakin versus Obi-Wan, because I just think it had the right mix of, like, action kind of looking like a dance of light, and like the emotion behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But what kind of battle are you expecting?
I'm not. One of the things is, between Obi-Wan and Anakin, there is so much to that fight. You've got two people that are total best friends,
Mm-hmm.
and Anakin turning and them having to confront each other and fight. It's a fight that they both knew were coming when they made that realization of that turn. And on top of that, I just think that the people that, on the production standpoint, the people that they hired to do the fighting choreography were a lot more in tune with, like, attention to detail compared to the people
And
that
action choreography.
Yeah, with these new movies, you look at the sword fighting styles, and there really isn't a whole lot of choreography to it, and at the same time, a lot of the parries and the strikes are very unrealistic. And so when you're not really paying attention, it looks flashy and it looks fine. But when you're really looking at how, say, like from the last movie, when they take on the
Praetorian guards.
right, the Praetorian guards, one of two things. One, the Praetorian guards were just trash at at their duty of guarding
Probably
Snoke.
because they couldn't see out of their helmets.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can kind of tell, like, Daisy Ridley, it looks like she missed a mark. And I think they just should have used a different take where she made the mark, and then you kind of see some clips where this guy has two knives until he has one, because or else he could have killed Rey.
Mhm. I don't doubt that they'll think that they have a really cool battle between the two of
Yeah.
them. I'm not expecting very much because from what they've delivered from The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi have been very uneducated with the sword fights.
Yeah. And for as much as people say, like, the battles from the prequels only looked cool, they looked cool, but they also had a lot of, like, thought behind them. Like, Duel of Fates, Qui-Gon was leading Darth Maul to a narrow area so it could be contained. And so he could focus.
Yeah.
And episode 3, Anakin and Obi-Wan, it doesn't just look cool. Like, Anakin and Obi-Wan, like, you can see Anakin has the upper ground and Obi-Wan is barely hanging on throughout the whole thing, and he's just, like, very defensive, trying to figure out a way to get through. And you can tell these are brothers, like, old master and apprentice, just going at it, like, no seat belts at all.
Uh-huh. Well,
And
Obi-Wan's a naturally defensive fighter, and
yeah,
Anakin is all about, offense is the best defense. And so, yeah, and you can see that through the entire Jedi battle of Obi-Wan just, parry, 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 Anakin strike, strike, strike. And then, finally there's a point where Obi-Wan sees the perfect shot and takes it and wins the battle.
yeah. Because, I mean, in episode 8, it's kind of just more about turning on a lightsaber strategically. Like, that can be cool, but I also like to have, like, I don't know, using an activated lightsaber strategically.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we can move on to other cool-looking shots. I just have to note that 51 seconds into the final trailer, there's a beautiful shot of what I assume is an ice harbor, like, seen in reflection in a sea. It looks really nice. Like, I want to go there, It looks cool. Yeah, I'd love to go there. It's a beautiful shot. I hope it's not in space and it's a floating ice planet, because planets are supposed to be spherical, but, whatever. And then we have a shot of the throne of Palpatine. One cool thing I noticed is, like, it's made to look like Ralph McQuarrie's original concept art for the Emperor's throne room, which was originally going to be on a lava planet in Return of the Jedi, but they ended up changing it to aboard the Death Star. And then, like, the throne was a little bit more of a swivel chair.
And it's kind of funny because it's like Emperor Palpatine's favorite armchair that you see from Revenge of the Sith, and you see it again in Return of the Jedi. Or technically, you see it in Return of the Jedi first, but you see that he's had a chair just like it all those years, which is
Really?
yeah.
I'll have to rewatch that. That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
So he does love something. And then we see the shot of a Star Destroyer coming out of the water. It looks like icy water, which reminds me that the Enterprise came out of the water in a kind of similar shot in Star Trek Into Darkness. That was also directed by J.J. Abrams.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he's kind of copying himself.
I mean, if it worked once,
it can work twice. Lightning strikes twice.
It's an interesting shot. The Imperial class Star Destroyer ones aren't very well structurally sound, and so
Yeah.
for one of those to be submerged underwater is pretty questionable. But
Yeah, but
they
I
don't
don't
know
think
that.
anyone's thinking this through. So, just kidding. This is being thought through, but I just think if Lucas were in more of an executive producer capacity, that he could kind of explain some of these things a bit more. Then we come to a whole lot of ships, like ships on top of ships on top of ships. Like, if you think it, there's a ship there. There's probably a kitchen sink. There had better be a kitchen sink. The intro to Revenge of the Sith had a kitchen sink. Everyone has mentioned Ghost. The ship Ghost from Star Wars Rebels is in there, and Ghost was also already seen in Rogue One, so we got some continuity there. That's cool. We also have a hammerhead that was also first seen in Knights of the Old Republic and also Rogue One, so that is pretty cool. And then we have Princess Leia's style of ship, within there. And whatever that one's called, I kind of forget. I always just call it Tantive.
So the Tantive 4 and the Princess Leia ship is the same as the CR-90,
Mm-hmm.
but they also have in there the you get like a straight on shot of the Nebulon B or also the medical frigate.
Oh, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool.
It's a little bit you actually see two of them, but they're a little bit hard to see because you're looking at a straight on front shot, and kind of what really is iconic with the Nebulon B is you got like the really large front end, and then you got like the really skinny mid
Yeah.
structure, and then you've got the engines in the back,
Yeah.
and all you
So,
see is that front arc there.
yeah, so it's massive, and there's a whole lot of ships. Like, once we see the final movie, I'm foreseeing a lot of people are just going to pause that, and people are probably going to, like, be finding even more ships, like, a year out, probably. That's my guess.
Yeah, I think the Ghost got like the most attention just because of Star Wars Rebels. I think
It's Ghost! Come on! Yeah!
the more interesting detail is if they're going to bring that character that pilots the Ghost into the film.
Hera, yeah, she was mentioned in Rogue One, so maybe we could see her son Jason, who is Hera and Kanan's son. He's half human, half Twi'lek, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's another character to introduce to a film that's closing out a franchise, which
He could just be a cameo, but
yeah,
people who care could know who he is.
and they're already bringing in, as at least as far as cameo is concerned, Wedge Antilles.
Yeah, who didn't make it to episode 7 and 8. He's probably like, I'll come back, but you can't kill me off. And they're
I'd be curious to see if he reprises his role as Rogue Leader, or
if Poe is gonna do that, who knows?
right, if they re-promote Poe, or if they bring in Wedge to take basically his old spot back.
That would be cool. So speaking of ships and X-Wings, or ships destroyed in the past by X-Wings, the Death Star is kind of friggin' intact. Like, I thought that there was a nuclear explosion and it was pretty much disintegrated, but here it is on the ocean planet looking pretty okay. Like, Rey and Kylo are just kind of recreating shots from Return of the Jedi in the Emperor's throne room. I think the throne is even still there.
So
how did that happen?
So I've looked at some ideas that seem pretty plausible. As far as the throne being mostly intact, that's a bit far fetched. But as far as the laser arc being mostly intact, it's not that far off, because when Wedge blows up the reactor of the Death Star 2, everything that was near the core would have just been instantly vaporized. But it's still an explosion, so the outer shell of the Death Star would have been propelled into every different direction that the explosion arced out from. And so for example, that laser dish smashing into Endor isn't that far-fetched, But having a ton of like Death Star fragments on Endor, just with particles entering the atmosphere, a lot of the Death Star should be vaporized by Endor's atmosphere before it hits
Yeah,
the ground. But for a size something that large, wouldn't be that wouldn't be that far fetched.
I guess so. It's just, I don't know. Like looking at the explosion, it just, you got the feeling like nothing survived.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see if they get into that at all in episode 9.
Mm-hmm.
So C3PO, the music starts to get really good as C3PO says he's looking at his friends for the last time. I just want to mention this about the music. For me, the music in this trailer is probably the best thing to happen in Star Wars since, I would say, Rogue One. It's John Williams' theme, and after the minute 23 seconds mark, it's a kind of a recreation, a reinterpretation, if you will, of John Williams' theme done by Blake Robinson, and the horns and the choir. It just soars. The music soars. It's what Star Wars canon should be. It's recognizable, triumphant, phenomenal. Like just listening to it, it just makes me emotional, and I love listening to it. That's what Star Wars should be, and I just wanted to mention that Blake Robinson did an excellent job. But coming back to C3PO, he says he's looking at his friends for the last time, but did they even share a scene? Did the characters like Poe, Finn, and Rey share scenes with C3PO?
I mean, maybe Poe and C-3PO, not Finn and Ray.
Yeah. That's something I kind of notice happens a lot with films nowadays. I remember watching Spectre, and the villain in that says that he's going by Blofeld now, and it's played like that James Bond should be scared at what that name means, but that name means literally nothing to James Bond.
Uh-huh.
And the studio directors are kind of counting on the audience to be like, oh, that's the villain from all the old James Bond movies names, and it's cool for the audience, but if it doesn't mean anything to the character, it really doesn't mean much to the story. So if C3PO doesn't really share these scenes with Rey or Finn or Poe, it might sound nice, but it might not be true within the story. I don't really believe C3PO is their friend. If anyone's his friend, it would be Padme or Anakin or Master Luke,
Mm-hmm.
or Leia or Han. But I mean, Han and Luke aren't really around.
And Han and
anymore.
C-3PO. I mean, I don't think C-3PO hated Han, but Han sure hated C-3PO. So
yeah.
I think what they're going for is a similar mark that Harry Potter hit, where the scene that Dobby dies in Harry's arms, and he has that line where he's like, "It's nice to die with friends."
Yeah.
I think they're going for
Get
that,
the heartstrings.
right? Because that was a very powerful moment in Harry Potter. But again, it's missing what Harry Potter had. Harry and Dobby
had a good relationship going back to the second movie.
Yeah, and it was defined even more so in the books.
Definitely.
So when that finally happened, it was powerful. It was heartbreaking. And in Star Wars, it's like, I don't even care about Rey or Poe or Finn, any of these guys. What is this line?
Yeah. It is interesting because I think Star Wars was originally written as the Journal of the Wills. It was, and how the story of Star Wars got to our galaxy within a draft was through C-3PO and R2-D2 telling the story of what happened, and it was called The Journey of the Wills. That's why it says a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think they can get rid of C-3PO, but maybe they just ran out of like human characters to kill off, which is sad. Oh, and also there's a battle droid behind C-3PO, so everyone's mentioned that. We might as well mention it. There is, in fact, a battle droid.
I completely missed it.
Yep. It's kind of out of focus, but it is there. And I just hope that there's more than just like kind of like stuff you have to see in the background referencing the prequels. If this is the 9th movie, kind of like ending the movie, like trilogy of trilogies, I think that there should be more interconnecting tidbits and arcs rather than just a random Easter egg, you know, occasionally. It looks like Leia's hug happens again, and I think that might be one of Carrie Fisher's only scenes. Sadly, I did notice that the trailer ended up being released on the late and great Carrie Fisher's birthday. That was a nice touch, and she also has top billing. I believe it's the first time, maybe besides Rogue One, that a female, like, has, or I should say an actress, has top billing in a Star Wars film. So that's interesting. And then we have the horses. Maybe they're trying to say something that has kind of been said before with the Gungans versus the droid army and the Ewoks versus the Empire, that nature will win over technology. But I don't know. These horses just don't really look Star Wars to me. And they're just galloping on top of Star Destroyers. It's just a no from me.
What's different about how it's been done in the past is both the Gungans and the Ewoks were fighting to take back their homeland. Like the Ewoks is a great example where, like, they're a very capable race, but it took that little bit of rebellion, kind of like know-how and insight to the Empire to gain that upper hand and win the Battle of Endor. Whereas, you know, the Gungans were going to get slaughtered had the droid-controlled ship not been blown out of the sky.
Yeah.
But from the newer movies where they had like the horse racing, you know, they're trying to have this like animal, like this anti-animal cruelty stint. But there's really no use that these animals have other than, you know, being the vessel for these guys to, you know, for this new movie's example, to bring down the Star Destroyer, which, you know, whoever the captain of that Star Destroyer is, all he has to do is hit the throttle and everybody's off that Star Destroyer.
I hope no space horses are harmed in the making of this movie. Just the last thing I wanted to mention is, do you think Rey and Kylo are working together to destroy Vader's helmet, or do you think they're fighting, or is that not in fact Vader's helmet?
So I don't think it's Vader's helmet. I do think it's some Sith entity, but not Vader's helmet. From the shot in the film, it looks like it could be like some Sith bioprojection that reacts when a lightsaber connects with it, because it almost makes kind of an obsidian shatter effect when they hit it with their lightsabers. And that makes sense to me as in other lore, like more of a horror lore.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, for example, if we were to say like a lightsaber is holy and this artifact is evil, the act of connecting this holy object to this evil object would cause the evil object to implode. And that's kind of what I'm seeing this as. As by them striking it with these lightsabers, it just, it shatters it, blows it up. But is that Vader's helmet? There's really no evidence suggesting that it is.
Mm-hmm.
And Kylo Ren had possession of the helmet and is on his personal Star Destroyer. So where they were at looks more like the interior of a Corellian vessel, like the Tantive 4,
Mm-hmm.
and not the interior of an Imperial Star Destroyer.
Yeah. So closing, what are your thoughts, hopes, and fears for episode 9?
I mean, I hope it cleans it up. Like, I hope it gives it a good closer to the saga.
Mm-hmm.
I think the damage has been done to the saga, and so basically this is gonna just hopefully wrap it up and tie it off, and then we can worry about other Star Wars content down the road.
Yeah.
I think it has some alright potential, but with what J.J. Abrams is kind of left with, it just
He
hope
has to
that
finish what he started.
yeah, I just hope it makes sense, at this point.
Yeah. My hope, just the major thing I would love to see is just return of Hayden Christensen as Anakin, because if Palpatine is returning, I would just love to see Anakin again.
One rumor is that talking about an Obi-Wan series with Ian McGregor, it's also
Mm-hmm.
possible we're going to see Ian McGregor as a Force ghost in Star Wars 9.
But he's supposed to be Alec Guinness.
Right, but there have been some floating talk around that
Mm.
he's going to be Force Ghost Obi-Wan. So,
So people complain if it's a young Anakin, but they won't if it's a young Obi-Wan.
yeah, I mean, there's nothing they can do about Alec Guinness. Alec Guinness is, rest in peace. But
Yeah. But I think having a young Anakin as a Force ghost, it's like you've seen and identified with like Hayden Christensen as Anakin, so it just makes a little bit more sense to see a young Anakin before you turn to the dark side as a Force ghost, but that's not the point of what I was trying to go for. But I'd love to see Anakin return because he's the chosen one. He's the OG Skywalker,
that would be an interesting arc to see Anakin or Darth Vader spent so much time around the Emperor all those years. And it would be interesting to have kind of that consulting moment of, hey, we have this, the Emperor's back. What are we going to do with him? And then Anakin be like, this is what I observed in all the years. And at the time, I wasn't strong enough to take on the Emperor by myself.
But this is how you do it.
Yeah. Ruin his armchair, and then he'll get angry and then throw him down a shaft and he'll die or something.
I am also glad that Lucas is back to help out with 9. I think he should have been not in like a writer director capacity for 7 and 8, but I think he should have at least been consulted or like had an EP credit, executive producer. But I think he just should have been involved, so I'm glad that they are consulting him and kind of saying like, how does a Star Wars work, How would you do this? What do these characters do, So I'm glad about that. One fear I have is that I haven't read any spoilers at all whatsoever. I'm not interested in that. I just want to see it the first time without knowing anything in theaters. But I just hope that Kylo doesn't save Rey and redeem himself, but die defeating Palpatine, and then Rey is left to start the Jedi or whatever she wants to start, and that's how we leave, because that's how Return of the Jedi ended, is Vader redeemed himself by saving Luke from Palpatine, killing Palpatine, and dying in the process, and Luke was left to start the Jedi, and that's how Return of the Jedi ended. But if that's how 9 ends, it's like, why?
What if it's
Why
the other way
bring all
around?
these characters back? Why bring Palpatine back just to be killed by characters we don't know or love as much, and then have like Han, Luke, and all these other characters killed, and like some might argue like their characters were kind of reverted back to who they were or changed. And I just don't want that to happen.
But remember, it's not about dying for what you believe in. It's about saving what you love.
I guess so.
So what if Kylo is about to sacrifice himself to defeat the Emperor, and then Rey stops him and says, "No, I love you."
Oh boy. Oh, that might be just a bit too much for me. But I suppose we'll just have to be in suspense until December 20th.
All right, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about the Ebon Hawk. As this is the title of our podcast, the Ebon Hawk is the ship that they use from the video game The Knights of the Old Republic. It's a vehicle kind of similar to kind of the role of the Millennium Falcon. It was kind of that core ship that takes the characters from point to point. Even its history of the ship is very similar to the Millennium Falcon. The pre-KOTOR existence is it was kind of passed between pilot to pilot, as whether it was involved with smuggling or crime, it was just kind of involved with that type
Always involved with the exchange.
Yeah. And it was owned by several different pilots, none of which were really all that important up to Revan. I mean, if I were to start listing off some of these pilots' names, there really isn't anybody that comes to mind that is a real standout in the Star Wars universe. But Revan uses it for a long time. He obviously used it throughout the video game, but after the video game, he kind of does a similar journey that the Emperor Palpatine takes, where he goes to the unknown regions in search for the Sith. And that's ultimately where he loses possession of the Ebon Hawk, where it gets picked up again eventually by... It gets picked up again by the Exile, but it's just kind of a ship that passes hands until Cirque picks it up.
Amitra Surik, the Exile. Yeah, and we were kind of thinking we wanted to go over what the Ebon Hawk is, because since our podcast has been launched, we've received a lot of positive feedback, but a lot of people have asked me, like, what's an Ebon Hawk? So we just wanted to explain. And one thing I learned, I thought Ebon was just a made-up word. Like, kind of like, you sometimes get, like, made-up Star Wars words, like Anakin's made up, Luke's kind of real world. But Ebon actually means dark brown or black, like ebony. So if you ever want to play a game, just kind of get, like... It's kind of like the Millennium Falcon. You just get, like, an adjective plus bird. So you have, like, the Shining Phoenix or the Gleaming Osprey, Yeah,
ultimately the ship was created by BioWare to be the vehicle of this game.
Yeah.
And when they came up with the title, the Ebon Hawk, it was fashioned very similar to the Millennium Falcon, but
definitely.
As iconic of a ship as the Millennium Falcon is, they didn't want to like outdo the title of the Millennium Falcon, so they went with the Ebon Hawk, so where it's not so kind of like infinite as Millennium, and if you compare like a Falcon and a Hawk, they're similar, but kind of the Falcon is
Falcon's better.
It's like the king of the sky. But I mean, it's a very interesting ship. It's a similar style as the Millennium Falcon. It's not Corellian, but it is a yacht.
Yeah.
So kind of built to be kind of a space houseboat, good at smuggling.
Yeah. Throughout KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2, the Ebon Hawk is like in each game. So we're like, there's some continuity there, And in KOTOR, the pilot is Cartho Nassi. I believe the co-pilot is Bastila, and then in KOTOR 2, I believe the pilot is Atten Rand. And then, is it Kreia who is the co-pilot?
I'm not that far into KOTOR 2 yet.
Okay.
I'm late to the party, but I'm still playing the game.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's Kreia, but if it's not, it's been a while, and we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
But...
Like I could scroll through the wiki, but I think spoilers at that point.
Not as much of a top priority right now. But yeah, we noticed like some of the music in KOTOR. The music, like the Ebon Hawk's theme, is also the theme song that plays when you're on Tatooine. So that's interesting. I think sometimes you have to be fiscally conservative, like when you have to hit a certain deadline on a budget, you have to be like, maybe people won't notice that this is kind of a double dipping song.
Well, a lot of the Star Wars games back in the day, old school LucasArts video games, they did borrow most of the soundtrack off of the original films. The game that I used to
Yeah.
play as a kid, Rebel Assault 2, the entire soundtrack came from Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes
Yeah.
Back.
It's smart. It's great music. It's already there. You don't need to do much else.
Yeah.
Then there would always be the music playing when you're
When you're in the Ebon Hawk turrets bringing down the Sith fighters.
yeah. There's always that music playing, and then in KOTOR 2, you have the Ebon Hawk riff, and then you have aboard the Ebon Hawk, and like when you hear that song, it's like you're like, I know I'm playing Knights of the Old Republic 2, the Sith Lords. Like it just brings you back. Like I was going through the music, kind of just seeing what was there, and I was like, oh my goodness, like I forgot this song, but I remember it. It's like all the memories are there. Then there's also the intense and kind of dark Battle of the Ebon Hawk. So my thoughts on the Ebon Hawk, the ship, are that it's like a ship that feels like home, you know, like in Knights of the Old Republic, like all your people are there, you know. You can talk to them, you can like rest and recharge, and when your teammates and you have to like come up with plans and strategize, you usually do it a lot like the common room of the Ebon Hawk. And if I had to choose like a ship, I would almost maybe choose the Ebon Hawk over the Millennium Falcon. Like it's just kind of nostalgic to me. Yeah, like just thinking of like just kind of hanging out like in Knights of the Old Republic 1, then in Knights of the Old Republic 2, when you have to kind of like repair the ship after it's been through everything it went through in the unknown regions, like you kind of get attached to it. What are your thoughts, Coden?
Yeah, I mean, so just a little bit exterior, like BioWare does a really great job with how they pace the video games. The Ebon Hawk is a great place to actually just kind of relax. Like you get into some intense moments in KOTOR, but you can always return to the Ebon Hawk and just kind of take a breath. And you don't have to, you don't even have to turn the game off. You can just kind of talk to the companions, learn a little bit about them, and then when you're ready to go, you disembark the Ebon Hawk and you progress through the story. And as you kind of mentioned, it does kind of bring about this feeling of home, which is specific to the Ebon Hawk. You know, the Millennium Falcon is kind of the iconic home ship of the original cast, but you really don't spend a ton of time in the Millennium Falcon in the movies. You go from, Tatooine to the Death Star and the Death Star to Yavin 4, and then you spend some time in Empire Strikes Back from Hoth to Bespin, and then in Return of the Jedi, it's really only used when Lando's leading the assault on the Death Star 2. So
Yeah.
it's more of just a figure in the background in the movies where the Ebon Hawk is your house.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of why we named the podcast the Ebon Hawk, is like it's used by the good guys. It's in both games, featured prominently. It's where people can rest and recharge, talk with their friends, and
It is the ship iconic to KOTOR.
yeah.
I doubt it'll make an appearance in the upcoming KOTOR series.
Oh, really?
Well, it depends if they're gonna kind of directly follow the story of Revan and Bastila, then it will. But
yeah.
if not, then I don't think so.
I would hope to see it. I could understand if they wanted to make it look a little bit different from the Millennium Falcon, but I just think Ebon Hawk is a good name, because I think it would be common for people in the Star Wars galaxy to name their ships after birds, even like in the future,
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, very possible that we'll see other 34 P7JKs or the Ebon Hawk, but to see the Ebon Hawk would be, I don't think is likely. The YT-1300 or the Millennium Falcon is, I mean, it's an older freighter, but it's not like Old Republic old. So I think to have like a Millennium Falcon or YT-1300 cameo is a bit unlikely, but they might do it just because they want to have that connection.
I think the characters have to get from planet to planet somehow. I just think it would be
Yeah.
cooler if it was the Ebon Hawk.
Mm-hmm.
We hope you've enjoyed today's episode. This has been Cassia.
And this has been Coden. You can find me at twitch.tv/CodenBond, where I'll be streaming upcoming Star Wars video games like Jedi Fallen Order. If you would like to contact me directly, you can find me at Twitter at CodenBond.
And then if you want to email us your comments and questions, you can reach us at ebonhawkpodcast@gmail.com. I'm also at Instagram at ebonhawkpodcast. And our intro and outro themes were composed by Alistair Shorman. He can be found at https alistairsounds.wixsite.com/alistairsounds. This has been episode 1.5 of the Ebon Hawk. Take care of yourself, meatbag, and may the force be with you. We will be back next week. Bye for now.